saw in my intro, or if you've seen any of my Instagram posts, you've probably seen that I am in Korea. Yeah, like, I haven't even processed it yet, but yeah, I'm really in South Korea as we speak. A lot of you are asking why I'm here, and the simple answer is that I'm here for fun. Yeah, I'm basically on a solo trip. I've been mentioning a lot of times I'm trying to take an international solo trip. Well, this is it. But all of my friends know that I've been trying to plan a trip to South Korea sometime this year. I didn't really know how or when it would be. I was thinking it might be later in the year, but my offices might open soon in the summer, so I knew that I kind of had to come here ASAP if that was the case. I had a lot of hesitations coming here around this time just because, one, February is super cold and I am not built for the cold, and two, just the whole quarantine and COVID situation. You know, Omicron happened and it's not necessarily getting better, but somehow I was able to make it happen. I made it work, and now I'm here in Korea. Yay! So I'm gonna be here for 2 months, which is pretty long. Maybe we'll make it 3 depending how much I like it, but my return flight is at the end of March, so I'll be back in the States around April. And since I mentioned work, my work situation is kind of the same. I am going to be working. I'm not really planning on taking days off except for maybe my birthday and just like a few days here and there, but I am going to be working my normal Pacific hours, so that means I will be up 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. Korea time working. I know, crazy, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do to travel. So that's the sacrifice I had to make. I am ready for the hours. I practiced waking up at 2 a.m. this morning, so my first day at work in Korea is going to be this next morning, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I cannot wait for these next 2 months. Like, leading up to this trip, I was very nervous, but now that I've settled in, I'm kind of getting more excited, especially once I leave quarantine. I'm really excited to, you know, just be able to explore Korea, a place that I've been wanting to visit for a long time, have some alone time, celebrate my birthday, and not just any birthday, but celebrate my 25th birthday here, and just do something that I've always wanted to do, and just, you know, travel and see the world. So I'm very excited to bring you all along in that journey. But in today's video, I'm just going to talk about basically my experience of all the things that I had to do before my flight here, during my flight, at the airport, and then this quarantine experience. Hopefully it'll really help anyone who plans to go to Korea anytime soon. I know I was really stressed with this whole planning process, and also I had to do this all in 1 week. I'll go into more details about that, but I literally bought my ticket to Korea a week ago, so it is doable to, you know, get everything done within a week. So hopefully this will help anyone out. And then I'm also gonna do a nice tour of my quarantine hotel. So if you're not planning to come to Korea and you want to skip my whole story rant experience, go ahead and go to this timestamp for the tour. Otherwise, let's get started. So first I'm going to talk about all the things that you need to do before your flight to Korea. And once again, this is coming from someone who booked their plane ticket literally 1 week before they left. So don't be like me, plan ahead of time, but if you are like me, it's completely doable. So the first thing you need to do, very obvious, but book your plane ticket, and don't do it a week before like me. This part's completely up to your preference in terms of like airline costs, etc. I ended up booking through Korean Air. It was on the more expensive side. I think for my flight here, it was close to 900, and that was not really within my budget, but it was a non-stop flight and I wanted to be comfortable, and I knew Korean Airlines had really good ratings, so that's why I went with them. But whatever fits within your budget or preferences is up to you, but book your flight. And then the second thing you want to do that's really important is book your Airbnb or hotel. So when it comes to booking your accommodation after, if you are not a Korean citizen, you cannot quarantine at a hotel or an Airbnb. You either have to quarantine at a family's house, I think, I don't know if that's correct, but I think you are able to quarantine either at a family member's house or you have to do it at a government hotel like me. But you need to book this in ahead of time just because there's going to be a bunch of paperwork in the future that you're going to fill out, or they're going to ask for your accommodation address and phone number. So just do that first, you know, book your flight and your accommodation, because then it's going to make the rest of the steps a lot easier. And then the third thing you need to do is apply for the k-eta. So this isn't a visa, it's basically like a travel authorization that lets you come to Korea without a visa for 90 days. And I believe this is only meant for tourists or people visiting their family. So if you're a student or an overseas worker, don't get the k-eta, you might need another visa. But anyone who's coming, you know, as a tourist, this is what you need to do. And you have to get this. You cannot miss this step or else they won't let you on your flight, from what I know. But getting it is honestly really simple. They have their own website. You basically fill out the whole application. This is where you put all of your information, like your passport, I believe your flight, maybe not, but I remember you do need to put your accommodation info there, so that's why you need to book your Airbnb or hotel ahead of time. And you need to make sure you apply for the k-eta at least 24 hours before your departure date, because that's how long it takes for them to approve it. So I definitely recommend doing this way before the 24 hours just to be safe. I did it about a week before, but yeah, once you fill it out, and then you have to pay about $10 for the application, and then you'll get an email within 24 hours that you've been approved. And then this next step was probably the one that gave me like the most stress and anxiety. It is getting a COVID test. So the guidelines for the COVID test always constantly change, so make sure you just check the official Republic of Korean Embassy website to see what the guidelines are for your departure date. Just because 3 weeks before I left, it was 72 hours, but then the week of my flight, it turned into 48 hours before your departure. So just constantly check the website to just make sure you know what time frame you need to take your test by, because if you're not, they will not let you on. So just make sure you get the COVID test right. And then also important things about the COVID test, you need to make sure it is a PCR test. I believe that's like the nasal swab one, and someone has to administer it for you or have to be watching you do it yourself. And then when it comes to your PCR lab results, you need to make sure you have all of the information that the embassy states. So you need your name, your date of birth, the date you took the test, the date the test results were issued. That is very important. Not a lot of labs put that in their test results, so make sure yours does. The type of test, so like if it's the RT-PCR test, and then your test results, and then it needs to be official looking from what I know. It needs to have like the lab information. Having a logo on that test result is really important from what I heard. If there's no logo, I heard they might not accept it because it doesn't look official. So just make sure it looks like a real lab test. And then some tips is take more than one. I know it can be a hassle, you know, getting a COVID test, but I ultimately took 3 just because I was just so anxious that something was gonna go wrong with this COVID test. So I took 3 just to be safe. And I'm honestly glad I did, because once I had 2 of those results, I felt more at ease before my departure, just because I knew I had a backup just in case one of the tests didn't work out. Also, the 48 hours timeline was 48 hours before my departure date, not my departure time. So my departure date was on a Friday, and I was able to take my test anytime Thursday and anytime Wednesday. So my flight was 11:30 p.m. on Friday, so technically 48 hours would be starting 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday, but because it was 48 hours before the departure date, I was able to take it Wednesday morning instead. So once again, just check the website, see if it's within 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever the time frame is before the departure date or the departure time, just so that your test is valid when you show it. And then this part is optional, but I highly recommend it. Order a SIM card and a portable Wi-Fi for your phone. So I ended up getting both. I got a SIM card because my mom gave me her old iPhone that's unlocked, and I'm able to put the SIM card and use data on here. I highly recommend getting a phone unlocked and getting a SIM card, because I heard in order to validate your vaccine, if you're a foreigner, you need a Korean SIM card to download the QR code app system situation. So I heard they give paper passes as well, but I didn't want any hiccups while I was here, so I made sure to have an unlocked phone and get that SIM card just in case. And then for my personal phone, I got the portable Wi-Fi just because since it's not unlocked, I can't use a SIM card with this, so I got a portable Wi-Fi just in case I need to use this when I'm out and about. But there's a ton of options to get portable Wi-Fis and SIM cards. The one I did is through KT, and I was able to pick up both of them at the airport when I arrived, so just look at what options there are out there for you and pick what's best. And then a huge tip that I have that I really recommend before you leave, you know, all of the bookings, your reservations, your k-eta, your PCR tests, print everything and make several copies. Especially for the PCR test, I only needed 1 copy, but I think I made 3 copies of each just in case. But it's a lot easier than having to pull out your phone. You know, if your phone loses battery or if you can't connect to Wi-Fi, you won't be able to show what it is that they need. So print everything out, because it's just a lot easier when you go through all those checkpoints to just take out that piece of paper and show it to them. And then the last thing that you need to do, I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video, probably in another quarantine video, but is to pack. Very straightforward, but don't forget to pack. So next we're going to talk about my flight experience to Korea. Basically, when I got to the airport, it was very straightforward. Also, shout out to my parents and also my besties Jackie and Derek for seeing me off. SARANGHAE, I love you. So when I checked in at the counter, that part was really simple. I just showed my passport, my PCR test, and then a tip with the PCR test, make sure you highlight all of the info they'll be checking, like your name, date of birth, etc. It just will make it a lot easier, and then it'll show that, hey, I have all of the information that you're looking for. k-eta, I showed it. She also gave me a form to sign. I think it was for quarantine, I don't remember, but I signed something, and then I checked in my bags. There was a little hiccup because I was a little overweight, so I had to do some shuffling and put things in different bags, but aside from that, I checked in my bags and we were good to go. After that was security and TCA. Honestly, that part was very straightforward and normal, nothing new or different there. I just, you know, showed my passport, showed my boarding pass, did the whole security thing, and I was on my way. After that, I just chilled at my gate area for a little, bought a bottle of water, used the bathroom a few times, and then I was able to board my flight at the boarding time. And the aircraft itself was really nice, I think, especially because it was not a full flight at all. I think out of like that 300 seats, 200 seats on that flight, I think there was only like 50 of us. So there was a lot of space. There was no one next to me. I was able to get an extra pillow and everything, so that made the flight very comfortable for me. And then once I got settled on my seat, we took off, and I was on my way to Korea. But 2 hours within the flight before, you know, they turn off the lights and you sleep, they give you out 4 forms. And you need to fill out these forms because you're going to be showing them and turning them in at the Korean airport. So the first one was a health declaration form. This was really straightforward and standard. You just fill out all the information, and it's basically just asking, you know, your health and if you show any symptoms, and hopefully you don't, so just fill it out and just check no for all the symptoms and you're good to go. And then next is the travel record declaration. This is basically just going to ask, you know, if you visited any countries prior to your departure. So if you haven't, you can just put no and you're good to go. Next is the traveler declaration form. This is basically the customs form. So that's just if you declare any of the things that you're bringing into the country. It's just to make sure you're not bringing anything sus or illegal in. So if you're not, just put no and then you're good to go. And then the last card is just like a little square card, and it's your arrival card, and that's where you fill out, you know, your information and then your quarantine situation. I wasn't too sure what to put, so I just put quarantine facility, and then I also put the address to my Airbnb and also its number just to be safe. We'll go over the Korean number in a little because there was a little hiccup with that for me, but you also need a Korean phone number because they're going to contact someone to verify that you're coming to Korea when you arrive. But then I filled out all those forms, and honestly the rest of the flight there was smooth sailing. I think out of the 10 hours I slept for 8 of it, and also the food on the flight was really good. I think Korean Air is probably one of the best airline foods that I had. I had bibimbap for dinner and then just a regular egg and potato breakfast, but it was really good. Like, it tasted edible and I wasn't mad at it, so good job, Korean Air. Okay, now we're gonna go through the most stressful part of my trip. And when I mean stress, I mean I didn't know if I was going to be allowed into the country. So let's go over it. The reason why the process at Incheon airport was so stressful is because they had 6 million checkpoints. Like, I'm over exaggerating, but there was just so many checkpoints, so be prepared for just a lot when you arrive. So the first checkpoint was very straightforward. First was a temperature check. It was just kind of one of those big screens, and then the camera like looks at you and then your face will turn green if your temperature is good. If it's not, I'm assuming it turns red, but mine was good. And then you wait in line a little, and then you get to a counter, and then that's where they check your health declaration form, your travel record declaration, your PCR test, and your passport. And then he questioned me for a little, and then like I said, my Korean number was a little sus. We'll go into more detail about that. So he questioned me a little, and I started freaking out already, but he let me through. And then I think they take your health declaration and your PCR test. So they like take that, so that's why I make extra copies just in case. And then you go to the second checkpoint, and this is where you sit down and they will call your Korean number that you provided. And this is where I was freaking out because my Airbnb gave me a number, but it was not a full Korean number. It was a customer service number. I believe a Korean number is like 8 digits. The one they gave me was 6. So automatically the person who was helping me said, "Oh, this isn't a Korean number." And I said, "Oh, well, this is what my Airbnb gave me." And he said, "Well, it's not a Korean number." And I just said again, "But this is what they gave me." So you can imagine I was already freaking out about this. I did not have a backup Korean number at all. And then he basically said, "Okay, well, I'll just call it." And I said, "Okay." When the immigration officer called the number, he hung up and said, "The call service is not open until 9 a.m. And I arrived at 5:30 a.m. So I was sitting there freaking out and saying, "Oh, really?" And he asked me, "You don't know anyone here?" And I do know people in Korea, but I don't have their numbers on hand, and I thought the Airbnb number was good to go. And I said, "No, I don't know anyone here. I don't have another number to give you." And he kind of just sat there for a little, and he nodded, and he said, "Okay." And I went, "Okay." So I wasn't sure if he was gonna revisit this whole number situation, but then he basically said, "Do you have the app on your phone?" So that's part 2 of this checkpoint. You basically need to download an app. There are QR codes all over the airport when you arrive. There's also one on the back of one of the forms that they give you. So you need to download this self-check health app, and once you download it, the person who's helping you will show you how to do it. This part is completely irrelevant though. You need to do it, but you completely delete this app when you get to your quarantine hotel. Just letting you know, but you know, it's part of the process, so you gotta do it. So once he showed me how to use the app, he took an extra look at my papers. I think they check your passport and your k-eta, and then he gave it back and he said, "Okay, on to the next." And I said, "Okay, 감사합니다." So I think I just lucked out with this whole Korean number situation. Definitely don't try to risk it like that. Like, get a Korean number from someone you know, or your accommodation, like a full one, just so you can avoid the hassle like me. But I have heard of other people when they arrive, sometimes when they call the number, the person doesn't answer and they still let them go. So I think you can get away if there's a hiccup with the number, but still, better safe than sorry. So then I headed to the 3rd checkpoint, and this was another desk where someone helps you, and they basically checked my k-eta, and then they made me sign a few forms here, and they were basically quarantine forms. They asked, "Oh, you know, you have to quarantine at a hotel for 10 days at your own expense. Is that okay?" And you say, "Yes, that is okay," because you have no other option or else you can't enter. And then you sign your forms, and then they gave me a little tag, I don't know what it was for, and they sent me on to the next checkpoint. So then the 4th checkpoint is basically the formal immigration that you go through when you enter any country. At this point, I was so frazzled and stressed, I just gave her my folder with all my papers, and she took a look at everything, she handed it back to me, and she sent me on my way. So this one was straightforward too. I think they check your passport and they give you your visa, so yeah. But then after the immigration checkpoint is the baggage claim. So this is where you get all of your bags. So I just grabbed my bags. I kind of settled and composed myself for a little and got ready for the next 500 checkpoints that were after that. But that's what's after immigration. And the 5th checkpoint is very fast and straightforward. It's basically the customs checkpoint, and this is where you submit your traveler declaration form. That's where you claim anything of the stuff you bring. So I just handed to her. Since I didn't claim anything, she just let me walk straight through, and that was checkpoint 5. Okay, checkpoint 6. This is where you go to another table and they ask for your entry card, and then you get a little slip from immigration when you show your passport. I'll put a picture here. But you show those two things and they kind of just say once again like, oh, you're gonna quarantine at a government facility for 10 days at your own expense. Is that okay? You say yes, and they say, okay, please stand to the side. And then you go to the side and you wait. So then I went to the side, sat down, and then I thought I was done and good to go. I was not done or good to go at all. And then once I sat down, I was basically sitting down for like 1 minute, and then he said, okay, everyone, get your bags, let's go, follow me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was basically dragging my bag, so tired at this point, and made it to checkpoint number 7. And honestly, at this point, I don't even know what he asked for. I think he asked for my passport and my k-eta again, so I just gave it to him, and he checked in and he said, okay, you're good to go, stand to the side. And that's what I did. But then I wasn't done yet, because I had to pick up my SIM card and my portable Wi-Fi, which was waiting for me somewhere in the terminal. So I asked one of the workers, hi, can I go pick up, you know, my SIM card and my portable Wi-Fi that I ordered here? And they said, no, you can't leave the area. And I kind of stood there and was like, well, I need to pick it up because I ordered it and it's there. And they said, well, you can't leave the area. So they kind of talked for a little amongst themselves, the workers, and then I was just standing there like, please let me pick it up because I already paid for it. And then finally they said, okay, we'll take you. And they literally had someone chaperone me, because I think they just don't want passengers walking around the airport, especially ones who need to quarantine. So that's completely understandable. So if you need to pick up your things, just explain to them you ordered it and it's waiting for you, and they'll get someone to chaperone you. So basically I just left the quarantine area with my lovely chaperone, and then I went to the desk where I was able to pick up my SIM card and my portable Wi-Fi, and then I headed back. And by the time I got it and picked it up, when I headed back, everyone was already on the bus, and they said, come on, let's go, you need to go on the bus. And I was like, okay, I'm going. So I got all my bags, went out, packed it on the bus, and was on my way to the hotel. But then the next part of your journey is going on the bus to your quarantine hotel. So the deal with the hotels is you cannot pick what hotel you go to. It is completely random. I believe there's about 10 or maybe 15 rotating hotels around and in Seoul that act as a quarantine facility, but like I said, you cannot choose. Once you get on that bus, it'll tell you on the screen what hotel you're going to, and that's what you have to settle for. So we drove about 40 minutes till we got to the hotel, which is the Ramadan Yongjin, I believe. So it's not in Seoul, we're about maybe like 40 minutes away from Seoul. But then when we got to the hotel, we took out our bags, and then they sat us down and went over the whole quarantine process and procedures with us. So once you sit down, they ask for your passport, and then you fill out 2 pieces of paper. One of them is an invoice, I think, because it had my price or cost on there. So for the 10 days that I'm staying in this hotel, it is pretty much equivalent to $1,000. Sad, but what can you do? You gotta pay it. And then the only other thing on that paper that I filled out is your food preference. So when you're here, they feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 times a day. And then the options on that paper were pretty much normal, vegetarian, no pork, and then you can list any allergies. So I just put normal just to make it easy for them. And then the second paper is basically just a medical examination form where they ask for your medical history and if you have been showing any symptoms. And then once I gave them all those forms, I gave them my credit card to pay the $1,000, and then they gave me my room key and told me to head up into my room. And that's where I am right now. But yeah, pretty much the hotel room is very nice. I mean, in my opinion, I wouldn't say it's necessarily 5 stars, like it's not a luxury room, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily the cleanest, like it's not dirty, but I wouldn't say it's like extremely clean either. When I got here, I made sure to sanitize everything just to be safe, but for what it is, I am comfortable here. This is already my 2nd day of quarantine, and honestly, I feel comfortable, I feel fine, and I think I'll be able to survive the 10 days here. But I won't go into too much about this quarantine situation just yet. I'll probably make another video of my quarantine experience, but the biggest things are, yes, they serve you breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so you get 3 meals. Highly recommend bringing your own food just because they are a little small, so if you think it might not be enough for you, definitely bring extra food and snacks just in case. And the biggest thing, which is obvious, is that you cannot leave your room at all. The only time you can open your door is to pick up the meal when they drop it off. So just keep that in mind whenever you come to Korea. You know, you have to do this quarantine situation whether you like it or not, if it's still in place. So if it's not something you want to do, definitely consider coming later in the year when hopefully quarantine might end. But that is basically a summary of all the things that I had to do before, during, and after my flight to Korea and how I got here. So if you listened to all of that, great job. I'm glad you're still here. But now I think I'm just gonna give a little room tour of where I'm gonna be for the next 10 days. So let's go. So here's basically what my room looks like. I feel like it fits one person comfortably. I don't remember, but I think 2 people can quarantine in one room if they're married, but it might be a little cramped for 2 people. But I'll go into this part later. Here's a little nook that I have with all of my food. Like I said, it is very smart to bring noodles just because the meals here are a little small. So if you think you might get hungry, definitely bring snacks. I also brought a lot of emergency just to, you know, keep myself protected. This water was provided by the hotel, so they do give you a lot of water. And I think you can ask for more if you run out. I brought this pot with me to cook my noodles, of course, because there's no microwave here. They do provide a kettle, but I just brought this pot to, you know, be able to cook these bad boys. And then in here are just some things that they give you, like toiletries, toothbrushes, straws. I had some coffee cups in here that I'm able to use, a hair dryer if you need it. And then you also get a little fridge, which is useful. Here's a nice mirror. Hello. But here is the bathroom, and honestly, I was very impressed with the bathroom. I feel like it's very nice. It's pretty clean and I'm really happy with it. We have some towels, lots of toilet paper, a bidet. We love bidets. Here is my sink space with all my skincare. And then the shower. The only problem that I have with this is that there's no shower curtain. So it's been a struggle taking a shower, but I am Filipino, so, you know, Filipinos, we make it work with hard shower situations, so there's that. And then I'm not gonna open the door because I don't want to get in trouble, but the only time you open this is when you pick up your meals for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and when you put your trash out. They pick up your trash and you put it all in this orange trash bag, and they pick it up every day at 7:30, so that's the only time you open that. But then once again, here's my room. So they gave me a second bed. Don't know why, but it's very useful because I'm basically putting all of my clothes that I'm gonna use in quarantine here. And then those are just some other supplies. I'm gonna see if I can exercise while I'm in here. Who knows? There's not a lot of space. And then here is the TV. It is mainly just Korean channels from what I saw. Yeah, so mainly just Korean channels, and there's no subtitles, but I did bring my HDMI and it works. So if you have an HDMI, you can hook up your laptop and it will show on the TV, so that's very useful to have. Hello. But we have a nice little desk area. This is technically going to be my office when I'm working 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. here, but if you need a desk, they'll provide you with one. We have another nice desk. This is where I've been eating my meals, so it's really nice. Here's me trying to learn Korean. And then a nice little side table. And then my bed, which is actually pretty comfy. It's on the firmer side, but I fall asleep, so it's fine. Look at my avocado. And then last but not least, here is the lovely view. Once again, I'm not in Seoul. I'm more on the countryside. Off there in the distance is Everland. I think it's like the Disneyland here, so that's kind of cool. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to share about my experience of coming to Korea in 2022. Like I said, since COVID is always evolving, these things might change. So for all we know, my experience could be completely different for someone who's coming in a week or 2 or in a few months. So my biggest tip of all is that if you do plan on coming, just be very up to date with the official embassy websites, because it will tell you all of the exact requirements you will need in order to enter the country. And if you have any questions for me, just please leave it in the comments comments below. I feel like the biggest source of stress for me was that I just didn't have any answers to my questions, so I relied on things like these quarantine videos to answer them. So please, if you have any questions, more than happy to help. Just leave it in the comments below. But thanks for watching. I know this video was a lot of me talking, but honestly, I'm really excited that I made this trip happen. I still cannot believe that I am in South Korea, but I just can't wait to, you know, get out of quarantine and actually get into Seoul and start exploring this country and just, I don't know, live my best life, I guess. For now, I have to finish the rest of my 8 days, so hopefully I can make another quarantine video, maybe like 1 or 2 more before I leave. But until then, thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video and if you want to see some future Korea content, just make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and the bell button. Until then, see you soon. Bye!